Forget everything you know about security. The ultimate night watchman is actually a kangaroo rat. I know, it sounds absolutely unhinged, but think about it. Great security isn't about winning a fight. It's about being the first to catch that one tiny, microscopic red flag before the building even knows it's in trouble. If you're into these kinds of niche animal hiring decisions, hit subscribe. And let's settle this in the comments. Is there any animal alive that beats the kangaroo rat for the graveyard shift? I'm open to suggestions, but honestly, this 4-inch rodent is the undisputed MVP. It's time to get comfortable, because to understand why this rodent wins, we have to talk about the biggest mistake in modern management: staffing the title instead of the work. See, Night Watchman sounds like it should go to a broad-shouldered bruiser with a flashlight the size of a canoe oar, boots that announce themselves from 2 hallways away, and a face suggesting deep ancestral conflict with chain-link fencing. That is the poster. Fine. Posters are not payroll. The actual job is less cinematic and much more exacting. You need someone who can patrol a fixed site while almost nothing happens, notice a weak signal before it becomes an obvious one, stay awake through the spiritual landfill of 2 to 4 a.m, keep a route consistent, respond properly when routine breaks, and then document the whole thing with enough clarity that the next shift does not inherit a mystery. That is not a glamour role, that is a vigilance role. And the Kangaroo Rat, against all visual evidence, is built for that. It is mostly nocturnal. Good. The shift is overnight. It is mostly solitary. Better. The shift is usually quiet, underpopulated, and indifferent to your need for conversation. Its stronger senses are hearing and smell. Excellent. Overnight security lives or dies on subtle cues. It also uses ground vibrations and low-frequency sound. Now we are being rude to the other applicants. It often freezes briefly when disturbed, reads the situation, and then either continues or gets out fast. Very sensible. Not macho, not theatrical. Sensible. Its whole risk style is alert, cautious, evasive, and efficient. Tiny body, yes. Severe attention discipline, also yes. When you are evaluating candidates, that combination matters more than bulk. People who have never worked a long, quiet shift imagine security as a series of exciting incidents separated by short walks. Not even close. A real overnight watchman spends a huge amount of time in the soft, unpleasant middle where nothing dramatic is happening, and yet sloppiness would still be expensive. You are walking a route through a property that looks half abandoned and half deeply judgmental. The lot is empty. The service corridor smells faintly of dust and stale climate control. A motion light by the loading gate clicks on a second too late because maintenance said they would get to it. A vending machine hums with the moral confidence of a retired refrigerator. That is the environment, not glory, not action. Just a fixed site sitting there, needing one person to take low-level weirdness seriously. This is where other candidates lose me. A lot of animals sound impressive in the abstract. Wolves, big cats, bears, strong silhouettes. Excellent at being the cover image for a security company that wants to imply consequences. But if I am staffing this site, I do not care who looks sure best posed against a moonlit fence. I care who can handle the actual work without getting bored into uselessness. The best hire is not always the most obvious. It is often the one whose natural life already resembles the emotional job description. That is the Kangaroo Rat. Its life is basically one extended overnight shift in a risky environment. It forages mainly at night. It is built for open, arid habitats with loose, sandy soil. It uses burrows. It manages food carefully. It reacts fast when the environment whispers the wrong thing. That sounds less like a woodland creature and more like the one guard on site who still notices that the east gate chain sounds different tonight. A lot of human workers can stay technically awake through a quiet shift while becoming spiritually absentee. You know the type. They still possess a pulse and a badge, but their attention has drifted into a private mist where every door looks probably fine and every sensor beep sounds probably normal. That is how you end up with a small access issue becoming a larger access issue, becoming a supervisor call, becoming an email thread with 8 people CC'd by sunrise. All because one tired person stopped respecting the first little clue. The Kangaroo Rat has no such luxury. In a harsh environment, the first little clue is the whole business. It is a small desert rodent. In one species, around 65 grams on average. very small. Let us not lie to each other. If you saw one in a tiny employee parking spot, you would not feel immediately protected, yet the job does not actually require size in the way people pretend it does. The job requires someone to notice, assess, move, check, verify, log, and escalate. Size helps only if your security plan is medieval. Most real sites rely on layers, locks, badge readers, CCTV, motion sensors, radios, access logs, alarm panels, incident forms, supervisors, and emergency contacts. The Watchman is part of a system, observation first, response second. Physical domination somewhere far below, did he hear the weird thing in time? Once you frame the role correctly, the Kangaroo Rat stops looking underqualified and starts looking absurdly targeted. Its general work style impression, if I were writing the hiring note, would be quiet, alert, independent night shift operator with unusually strong weak signal detection and excellent comfort in low resource after hours conditions. You would raise an eyebrow at the phrasing, then you would meet the employee, then you would stop raising your eyebrow. Consider the opening hour on a fixed site. The first round is always deceptively simple. The grounds are still. The hallways are holding that strange blue-grey fluorescent hush that makes every mop closet look like a confidential annex. Outside, the lot has a skin of cold over it. A sprinkler head gleams under one lamp. The wind catches a scrap of paper against the curb. Indoors, the stairwell sounds a little too hollow. The watchman signs in, checks the radio battery, glances at the camera grid, makes sure the alarm dashboard is behaving, and begins the route. Nothing obvious is wrong. Good. That does not mean nothing is happening. And monotony is the first friction. Not intruders, not alarms. Monotony. Long, quiet minutes that flatten weaker minds into mush. The guard who cannot survive monotony will miss the real event, because real events almost always begin disguised as boring details. A gate not fully seated. A badge reader blinking a different colour. A side door that looks shut but is carrying itself with suspicious looseness. The quiet shift is not empty, it is full of small tests. The Kangaroo Rat is made for small tests. It is mostly nocturnal. That is not some cute side detail. That is fundamental staffing information. You are not asking it to stay up late against its nature. You are hiring someone whose whole schedule already says, yes, this is when I work. Nighttime is part of its safest operating window. The hours that drain most candidates are the hours when this one is fully online. That helps more than you might think. Night work punishes candidates who are merely tolerating the clock. They become sloppy because the whole shift feels like an offence. The Kangaroo Rat does not resent the hour. The hour belongs to it. Then there is the solitude, mostly solitary, again, vital. A fixed site watchman often works alone or with very thin support. No team brainstorming, no little morale cluster by the copier, no one to turn to every 15 minutes and say, pretty dead tonight. As though that sentence were a union requirement. You need someone who can keep shape alone. The Kangaroo Rat is almost aggressively suited to that. It has a strong solo bias. It is not built for sustained social coordination. Perfect. Nobody needs a group project at 3:12 a.m. near a locked utility gate. Its strongest senses are hearing and smell. Also perfect. The job depends on noticing what changed before the change becomes generous enough to explain itself. That is a subtle skill. The average romantic version of security work treats all danger as visible and dramatic. Real properties are pettier than that. They begin with sounds, smells, slight shifts, little traces of wrongness. The Kangaroo Rat lives in that world. So the first round continues. You move past the service entrance, past the loading bay, past a row of dark office windows reflecting only the lights that are supposed to be on. You check the same hinges, the same rails, the same latch points. The route repeats for a reason. Repetition is not lazy. Repetition creates a baseline. Without a baseline, nothing feels wrong because nothing is known well enough to vary. This is why I keep saying the best hire is not always the most obvious. Other candidates give you presence. The Kangaroo Rat gives you measurable attentiveness under boring conditions. That is much rarer, much more useful. Its first visible disadvantage is obvious. Tiny body, zero intimidation value. If a trespasser saw a Kangaroo Rat and experienced immediate career regret, I would want to study that trespasser. This limitation is real. You have to address it honestly or the recommendation sounds flimsy. The way around it is straightforward and frankly, exactly how a sane site should already operate. The Watchman is not a lone action substitute for systems. He works with lights, locks, cameras, radios, access control points, alarm software, and escalation procedures. If something significant is wrong, the employee identifies it early and activates the right response chain. That is the workflow. It should always have been the workflow. So yes, tiny body, fair enough. But the job is not loom near the darkness until the darkness apologizes. The job is stay attentive enough that the first small failure does not get promoted into a larger one. In that role, the kangaroo rat is immediately competitive. You can see it in the temperament: alert, cautious, reactive to disturbance, not swaggering through the lot like it personally owns industrial asphalt. Good. I distrust swagger in this line of work. Swagger misses hinges. Swagger misses minor access issues. Swagger misses the little click behind the gate because it has already decided the night should be grateful for its presence. The kangaroo rat has none of that vanity. It behaves like someone who fully accepts that the quiet shift is a place where tiny details run the show. That is the opening round. The environment is calm, the route is plain. The challenge is staying mentally alive without the help of novelty. The kangaroo rat excels there because the whole animal reads like a person who has spent a lifetime on the edge of probably fine and absolutely not fine, and has no intention of mixing them up. A little later, the property does what properties always do. It gives you one faint wrong note and then refuses to elaborate. Maybe it happens by the east gate, maybe near the loading dock, maybe beside one of those narrow service corridors with cinder block walls and a floor that turns every footstep into a small courtroom proceeding. The shift has been steady, the route is in motion, then something interrupts the pattern. Not a crash, not a shout, something thinner. A scrape so light it could be a chain settling. A mild shiver through the ground, a scent near the access point that does not belong there. One tiny fracture in the ordinary. This is where other candidates lose me harder, because a lot of workers wait for trouble to become obvious before they grant it dignity. That is a terrible habit. Weak signals are the job. The first clue will not arrive dressed for the occasion. It will arrive half-formed, vague, deniable, easy to ignore if your brain has already wandered into after-midnight oatmeal. The kangaroo rat is strongest precisely here. Its strongest senses are hearing and smell, and it uses ground vibrations and low-frequency sound. That is not just useful, that is almost unfair hiring. It is built to catch slight disturbances early. Slight. Early. Those are the words I want in the recommendation. This animal is basically a senior analyst of faint warehouse nonsense. The scene slows down. The overhead lamp near the gate buzzes. Gravel sits flat and pale under a thin skin of cold. Somewhere inside the building, a compressor kicks on and off. Beneath all of that, one new thing. Barely there. The kangaroo rat does not need the whole scene to declare itself. It detects subtle warning signals before they become obvious. That is one of the cleanest translations from animal behaviour to overnight security you will ever get. And the response pattern is even better. When disturbed, it often freezes briefly, detects danger, then flees or dives into cover if needed. That freeze is not indecision, it is assessment. The employee is not panicking. The employee is reading, pause, listen, confirm. If necessary, reposition. That is textbook good judgment for an uncertain signal on a fixed site. I would take that over fake bravery every single time. Picture the alternatives. A worse hire hears a faint metallic tick near the gate and decides it's probably nothing because he cannot be bothered. The gate remains unchecked. The latch issue remains minor for 20 minutes, then less minor. Wind catches it. The sensor trips. The supervisor gets called. Now there is a report, a timeline, a camera review, and 3 people using the phrase root cause at sunrise as though the root cause was not one bored guard failing to respect one small sound. That is how these things go, not with drama, with laziness plus delay. The kangaroo rat does not have a lazy relationship with weak signals. It has a deeply invested relationship with them. Its hearing is strong, its smell is strong, it uses chemical cues, it can read the floor through vibration. That means the environment reaches it through more than one channel. Good. Redundancy is a luxury in staffing. If the clue is not visual, fine. If it is not loud, fine. If it is a subtle shift in the substrate or the air, still fine. the Kangaroo Rat is practically a multi-channel sensor array with a tail. You can even feel how suitable its emotional profile is. It is not fearless. Excellent. Fearless people are frequently a workplace burden. It is exquisitely sensitive to nonsense, which is much closer to what a good overnight watcher should be. Hear the odd thing, stop, consider, move only with reason. It is the kind of employee who would detect that the vibes near door C have become suspiciously freelance and take that very seriously indeed. The uncertainty here is part of the tension. The clue might be harmless, a loose hinge, a chain tapping, some little mechanical shrug from the building. Fine. The job still required attention. A watchman does not get graded only on the large incidents. He gets graded on whether he noticed the small ones soon enough. From a manager's perspective, early false positives caused by attentive checking are much easier to live with than late discoveries caused by drift. And yes, there is a practical limit. The Kangaroo Rat is not built to physically inspect dangerous spaces alone. It is small, it favours evasion. But on a real site, the first step after detection is not to become a legend. It is use the tools. Check the CCTV feed. Bring up the camera nearest the gate or the corridor. Tap the light controls if they are available. Verify through the alarm dashboard whether there has been any access event. Call the supervisor if the signal escalates. That is not weakness. That is adult use of systems. This is why hiring through fantasy fails. The right worker is the one who treats uncertainty properly. The Kangaroo Rat does. Once the faint incident settles, maybe the gate chain, maybe a latch, maybe a minor property issue caught early, the route resumes. But now the property is more alive because it has demonstrated that the ordinary can twitch. Good. That makes the next part even more convincing. Routine patrol sounds boring until you realise that a fixed site watchman spends a shocking amount of his working life doing exactly that. Repeated rounds across the same terrain, same checkpoints, same turns, same doors, same patch of lot where nothing happens until one night it does. The challenge is not walking, it is walking without becoming decorative. The Kangaroo Rat is excellent at useful repetition. Its main movement style is bipedal hopping. Strong hind legs support long-distance escape jumps. Saltatory locomotion suits open ground. In simpler terms, this employee is built to move cleanly through exposed space and cover distance with efficiency. That matters on a site with stable patrol lanes, regular checkpoints, and a central post. The route needs to be repeated with enough consistency that deviations stand out. You are not taking scenic tours, you are maintaining a living baseline. The body shape supports that in a way I find deeply funny and deeply persuasive. Long hind legs, tail often longer than the body, little front half, overcommitted rear half, all somehow optimised for balance and quick ground coverage. Visually it looks like a rush draft that was never corrected. Operationally it is very good. Movement works best in open, sandy, loose soil terrain, fine. Then give the employee a site that behaves like that in spirit. Open lanes, uncluttered yard space, predictable ground, clear fence lines, straightforward approaches to doors and gates. A warehouse yard, a utility compound, a storage property with decent sight lines. If I'm staffing this site, I'm not assigning the Kangaroo Rat to a chaotic maze of junked pallets, hard-packed clutter and blind corners, just to make a point. I am giving it a place where route discipline can actually shine. And then there is the burrow. Important. The Kangaroo Rat uses burrows, depends on them, builds them, returns to them. That is exactly how I want this translated. The burrow is the post, tiny headquarters, the security desk, the little room with the radio charger, the logbook, the monitor bank, the half-functioning office chair, and one fluorescent tube that flickers like it has personal issues. You leave the post, check the route, come back to the post, out again, back again. Patrols anchored around a reliable base. That is not a strained comparison. That is the real architecture of a lot of overnight work. The employee already understands base return behavior. There is something almost managerial about that. One strong safe point. Repeated excursions into exposed space. No unnecessary lingering, no pointless improvisation, just the route. Check perimeter, sense doom, return to headquarters. Perfect. Exposure is the pressure during these rounds. Every time you leave the post, you move through areas where you can gather information and also where you are a little less insulated. The kangaroo rat is familiar with that dynamic. It does not move through open ground as if open ground owes it a favour. It moves through it efficiently. That is what good patrol looks like. Not swagger, not dawdling, clean motion with attention still intact. A weaker worker starts cutting corners, skips the farther gate because it was fine last time, turns one full round into a good enough half round, stops checking the service entrance because nothing has happened there recently. Then, naturally, that becomes the one point where something changes, and now a small omission becomes a chain of consequences. Missed route, missed clue, missed response window. Then the site manager is reading timestamps and wondering why the camera shows 28 undisturbed minutes where there should have been a checkpoint pass. Grim stuff, entirely avoidable. The kangaroo rat would not disrespect the route like that. Its whole life depends on disciplined movement through risk. That is built in. It also brings an energy-efficient style to the work, very helpful. Overnight patrol punishes candidates who waste motion. Too much pacing, too much false urgency, too much theatrical checking early in the shift, and by the back half they are mentally wrung out. The kangaroo rat is vigilant and energy efficient, a wonderful pairing. It means the worker is not deadened by routine, but also not burning all his attention on nothing. He has range left when the night gets long. You can feel the site settling into this pattern. Out across the lot where the concrete changes to rougher aggregate, past the dumpster gate, along the side wall where the wind makes the metal skin of the building tick faintly, back inside past the mechanical room, the stairwell, the silent office wing, the badge-controlled rear entry that almost never causes trouble right up until the night it does. The route repeats, the familiarity sharpens, nothing is dramatic, which is the entire point. And then routine gets interrupted the way it always does, abruptly and with terrible timing. An alarm, a door issue, a sensor event, something breaks the line of the shift, not a grand emergency. Most of the time it is some unpleasantly specific little incident that requires quick judgment. Still, the energy changes immediately. One panel beep and the whole building feels more opinionated. The hallway air seems cooler. The watch desk suddenly looks like a place with responsibilities. This is one of the clearest moments where the kangaroo rat separates itself from flashier candidates. Powerful hind legs support long jumps and rapid retreat to burrows. Good. That means it can change state fast. Its defensive style favours evasion over confrontation. Better. Good staff decisions often begin with "do not confuse response with chest thumping." The watchman's job during an alarm is not to become a one-person action trailer. It is to react fast, verify carefully, and escalate correctly. The property is sleepy, but the instant is not. Maybe a motion alarm near the loading bay. Maybe a door contact not fully closing. Maybe a service entrance reporting open when it should be secure. The watchman checks the alarm software, looks at the event location, brings up the corresponding camera if the site has one, and moves. Not wildly, with purpose. Fast enough to matter, measured enough not to create a second problem. That is very kangaroo rat behaviour. The shift from calm routine to acute alertness is instant. No warm-up, no motivational speech. One signal arrives and the entire animal becomes all attention. It also helps that the kangaroo rat is already good at early detection through hearing and vibration. The alarm does not exist in isolation. The watchman is often entering the situation already primed by the environment, a slight sound from that direction, a subtle cue on the prior round, a tiny sense that something around the bay or the corridor was off. That shortens reaction time in the right way, not by making the employee reckless, by making him quicker to take the signal seriously. The site tools matter here: cameras, alarm panel, radio, access control logs, even something as plain as a flashlight and a secure door between the watchman and the possible problem. When you are evaluating candidates, you want one who will use the environment intelligently. The kangaroo rat absolutely would. It is not the type to stride directly into uncertainty out of pure ego. That is not bravery. That is poor process. Its limitation is obvious and worth stating cleanly. It cannot physically confront an intruder. This is true. If the site genuinely requires physical interception, the kangaroo rat is not your employee for that assignment, but that is not most fixed site overnight work, and pretending otherwise is just fantasy hiring. Most real Watchman success comes from early notice, safe verification, correct communication, and timely escalation. In that chain, the Kangaroo Rat is very strong, so the response looks something like this. Alarm sounds. The Watchman checks the display. Camera feed comes up on the monitor grid. Maybe the picture is grainy because the site refuses to spend money on anything newer than a highly resentful security DVR. Fine. Good enough. The employee sees enough to know the area needs checking. Radio in hand. Light used sparingly. Move toward the point from the safer line. If something is genuinely wrong, do not become part of it. Verify from safety. Retreat if needed. Call the correct humans. That is the workflow. And the Kangaroo Rat's whole emotional energy fits this perfectly. Hear one odd thing, become intensely suspicious and immediately value cover. Yes, strong instincts. I trust that more than I trust the swagger candidate who hears a weird sound in a warehouse and thinks this is his moment to finally impress nobody. You can also feel the humour tightening here without becoming goofy. The Kangaroo Rat is not a bruiser. It is a detector of bad vibes with a very good exit plan. Wonderful hire, the employee who notices the wrong thing first and declines to stand in the wrong place longer than necessary. Mature. Rare. Maybe the alarm turns out to be minor. A door not latching, a sensor issue, a maintenance problem with ambitions. Whatever. The Watchman still earns his keep by handling the interruption properly. That is what the manager actually wants, not heroics. Clean response. Once that is contained, the next burden arrives. Boundaries. A lot of overnight security is less about responding to dramatic events than it is about protecting lines, doors, gates, badge points, after-hours thresholds. The whole site is basically a map of where people are and are not supposed to be. During the day, those boundaries are buffered by traffic, staff, activity, and sunlight. At night, they become sharper. One person in the wrong zone suddenly matters more. One open gate feels heavier. The rule line becomes visible. The Kangaroo Rat is unexpectedly suited to that. Some species are territorial. Some warn intruders. It has a strong solo bias and a vigilant reactive style. Those facts do not turn it into a nightclub bouncer, and thank goodness. I would not staff it there anyway. But on a quiet fixed site after hours, boundary work is rarely about physically dominating someone. It is about noticing the encroachment immediately, holding the space through process, and not letting little rule violations drift past because they seem minor. Set the scene outside by a perimeter gate. The lamp above the badge reader gives off that clinical yellow-white light that makes every surface look tired. The wind slides along the chain link. A truck bay sits empty, all corrugated steel and shadow. An unauthorized person shows up where they should not be, or a gate that was shut is now hanging in the most irritatingly I thought it would be fine kind of way. That is the moment. The Kangaroo Rat sees intrusion as a meaningful event. Good. The employee does not need to deliver a speech, it just needs to detect the violation early and activate the site response. Intercom if there is one. Badge verification if the point supports it. Call the supervisor. Lock down the zone. Check cameras. Note the time. Prevent casual slippage. This is where a lot of more obvious animals lose their edge for me. They are all image and no policy discipline. They look fantastic near a fence. Fine. Can they notice that the gate at the service lane has been left resting on the latch instead of actually seated? Can they stay calm when an unauthorized person appears and the right answer is not become a legend but follow the procedure, keep the line and create a clean record? The Kangaroo Rat can. Its value here is not that it is confrontation oriented. It is not. Its value is that it takes boundaries seriously. Some species warn intruders. That is enough. It behaves like someone who has never once believed close enough is a real security concept. I admire that. More organisations need that energy at the loading gate. The tools again help keep the whole thing realistic. Badge readers, door contacts, gate chains, camera views, intercoms, handheld radios, maybe an instant app on a battered work phone. Maybe a simple checklist at the post showing which access points need a second confirmation late in the shift. These details matter because the job is real human work. The Kangaroo Rat wins by using the work as it exists, not by turning into a myth. A weaker watchman lets one gate problem slide because it is late and the lot is empty and surely nobody's coming through now. Then someone does, or the wind does the rest, or the alarm panel gets involved. And suddenly the site manager is reconstructing how one little rule violation gained a pension. That is what bad hiring looks like. Tiny omission, stupid cascade. The kangaroo rat would have caught it. That is enough for me. Notice first. Do not romanticize. Do not be lazy. Keep the line. Once the boundary issue is handled, the shift takes one of its least glamorous turns, and from a manager's perspective, one of its most revealing. The incident may be over, the paperwork is not. This is a beautiful little cruelty of the working world. The event ends, your adrenaline subsides, the site returns to its chilly, underfunded stillness, and then the desk lamp comes on because somebody still has to write down what happened. Security work does not end when the problem stops. It ends when the log is clear enough that the next person does not inherit confusion. The kangaroo rat, improbably, has a lot going for it here too. It forages, carries seeds in fur-lined cheek pouches, and caches them in burrows or shallow pits. Pause there. Fur-lined cheek pouches for dry seed transport. That sounds less like biology and more like a specialty logistics feature somebody would brag about in a trade catalogue. Yet it is real, and it gives the animal an entire side competency that translates beautifully into overnight reporting. Find something important, carry it back, store it in the correct place, maintain the stash, return later when needed. That is incident management with a desert accent. A real watchman writes reports on irregularities, property issues, access incidents, alarm events, and anything else that might matter to the next shift, the site supervisor, or the people upstairs who enjoy phrases like documented response. The report is not decorative, it is the memory of the shift. Without it, the site becomes a rumour mill with a key ring. The kangaroo rat is already a resource location manager. It is effective at locating, storing, and managing scarce resources. That is almost embarrassingly transferable to the administrative side of a quiet overnight job. It even builds burrows and maintains caches. Again, that sounds like a worker who already understands the value of not leaving useful things scattered around in the open like a fool. Now, literal writing is of course a limitation, major one. The animal is not drafting polished incident narratives in complete sentences while sipping machine coffee. Fair enough. Communication is minimal and signal-based. Also true. This is where the workaround has to be honest, or the whole recommendation becomes flimsy. Simplified forms, checkboxes, voice notes, dictated logs, human admin support, a fixed site workflow where the employee can capture the essentials through structured tools and the system does the rest. Very normal, frankly. Plenty of real workplaces already rely on rigid incident templates because tired people at 4 a.m. are not at their literary peak. And once you have that workflow in place, the kangaroo rat becomes oddly convincing at the emotional side of reporting. The event happened at the East Gate. The employee noticed it early, verified the condition, secured the point, checked the immediate area, and returned to post. That is not a saga. That is a record. The cheek pouches become, in the funniest possible way, a metaphor for carrying field information back to base without dropping it. I enjoy that more than I should. It works too well. Picture the post now. Little room, one monitor with a grid of quiet camera views, one older monitor with the alarm dashboard, a paper logbook or a battered laptop running an incident form that some vendor promised was intuitive and absolutely is not. A two-way radio in its cradle. A pen that only writes if threatened. Outside, the lot is cold and flat. Inside, the employee is filing what happened because that is what responsible overnight work looks like. The friction here is bureaucracy, which is a deeply nighttime kind of burden. The interesting thing has already happened. The building is calm again. You would like the matter to be over. It is not over. Now you must make the thing legible. A weaker worker gets sloppy there. Leaves out the time, leaves out the exact access point. Fails to distinguish between alarm sounded and door was physically unsecured. Then the morning crew inherits mush. Not acceptable. The kangaroo rat's whole natural pattern says the opposite. Sort, carry, store, maintain, return. That is practically incident reporting religion. And there is something inherently soothing about the comparison. A tiny desert employee gathering the important bits of the night and placing them carefully into a safe organisational burrow. so tomorrow can retrieve them without panic. Lovely. Also, from a management perspective, very strong. Paperwork finished, the shift quiets again, but in a different way now. The early stretch had energy, the middle stretch had interruptions. Now the mood lowers and the thinking sharpens. This is where hiring discipline matters, because this employee is not the right choice everywhere. Say that plainly and the whole recommendation gets stronger. The kangaroo rat performs best in dry, open, predictable habitats and depends on burrowable ground. It is sensitive to disruption, noise, and crowding. Best performance depends on a narrow environmental setup. Good, useful constraint. Constraints help staffing. They stop you from making sentimental decisions. This is not your nightclub hire, absolutely not. Not your festival perimeter hire, not your 10 people arguing near the loading dock while 2 vendors and a contractor all insist they were told something different hire. Too much motion, too much noise, too much signal pollution. The kangaroo rat is excellent at reading subtle cues when the background stays legible. Drown it in constant commotion and you are not testing the animal. You are wasting it. If I am staffing this site, I want a quiet warehouse, a storage yard, a remote campus building, a utility facility, maybe a tidy industrial property with long clear lanes and very few human improvisers. That is where this employee belongs. Low disruption environment, stable road, weak signal still audible, minimal unnecessary conversation, one reliable post, one repeated patrol loop. The kind of place where nothing happened is the best possible review. This is where other candidates lose me again. People confuse universal applicability with quality. They want the guard, who could, in theory, be posted anywhere. That sounds sensible until you remember that almost every truly strong worker has an environment that suits them best. The kangaroo rat is not broad use, it is razor use. Put it in the right place and it becomes exceptional. Its sensitivity to noise and crowding is a real nerf. Let us not be coy. In a chaotic site, subtle warnings get buried. Too many moving parts, too much background chatter, too many human variables. The employee's finest strength, early detection of slight irregularity, gets drowned in ordinary clutter. That would be bad staffing. You do not blame the worker, you blame the manager. The workaround is assignment discipline, quiet warehouses, storage yards, remote campuses, utility sites, industrial properties where observation-heavy overnight work matters more than social choreography. There, the same sensitivity that would be a problem elsewhere becomes gold. You can hear the one chain rattle. You can notice the one odd change on the camera grid. You can feel the one slight environmental twitch that should not be there. The comparison between bad post and good post becomes almost laughably stark. Bad post, loud, crowded, unpredictable, too many moving pieces, too many people requiring interpretation, too much ambient nonsense. Good post, dry air, long fence line, one gate, one bay door, one service corridor, a handful of checkpoints, a post that stays put, a quiet camera room, a route you can actually know. In the first setting, the kangaroo rat looks strained. In the second, it looks clairvoyant. From a manager's perspective, that is the whole game. Not, is this animal universally impressive? Irrelevant. Where does this animal make my overnight site safer with the least drag and the highest signal quality? That answer is very clear, and once you narrow the placement honestly, the tone of the shift softens on its own. The bad fit environments fall away, the ridiculous competitors fall away, no need for more theatre. What remains is the actual site we should have been picturing all along. A stable property after hours, lit in patches, silent in layers, full of repeated surfaces and the possibility of small changes. The last long stretch of a quiet overnight shift has its own weather. Outside, the air sits flatter against the pavement. Indoors, the hum of lights and vents becomes the whole soundtrack. A metal handrail feels colder than it did at the start of the night. The parking stripes look chalkier. The same doors appear again, not because the job lacks imagination, but because keeping a place safe is largely the art of returning to the same few points with enough attention that they never become invisible. This is where the kangaroo rat stops needing to prove itself and just inhabits the role. It can survive with little or no free drinking water. Highly efficient kidneys support extreme water conservation. This is one of those animal facts that sounds almost indecently overqualified for a late overnight stretch. The job at this hour is endurance without drama, not heroic endurance, sparse endurance, thinly supported endurance, the kind where the site offers you a chair, a screen, a route, and maybe a vending machine that dispenses disappointment in spiral form. You continue anyway. That is Kangaroo Rat territory. Active nocturnal foraging paired with water-saving physiology gives the animal a very particular kind of nighttime stamina. It does not need abundance to function. It does not need constant stimulation. It can remain active in lean conditions. That matters in the late shift because fatigue then is less an emergency than a slow fog. The mind wants to blur the doors together. The rounds want to flatten into one long grey ribbon. The employee has to keep seeing. The kangaroo rat's whole life is built around continuing to see in a world that offers limited generosity. So the route continues. Out from the post. Across the lot, where the wind pushes a faint, dry whisper along the fence. Past the service door with the familiar scuff under the handle. Back through the corridor where the floor reflects the overhead lights in tired rectangles. A glance at the camera grid. Back outside. The same gate again. The same quiet. The same not quite silence. That repetition is no longer a burden now. It becomes the rhythm itself. Borough post logic returns here in the gentlest way. The post is the little headquarters, the reliable centre, the one human-shaped equivalent of a borough entrance where the night can be checked, logged and re-entered. Go out, come back, go out, come back. The pattern is calming because it is competent. The site remains watched not through spectacle but through return. You can also let earlier details come back in softer form, hearing, smell, vibration, still relevant. The building at this hour communicates almost entirely through tiny signs, a low clink, a soft thrum through the floor, a scent where none should be, a motion light that behaves one beat off. The kangaroo rat is still reading those things. It never needed the night to become exciting in order to stay invested. Foot drumming and substrate vibration as communication signals make a nice quiet return too, not as a gag forced onto every minute, just as a lingering image. This little employee's natural way of saying something matters is to send concern through the ground. Wonderful. Very on brand for a watchman whose whole calling is to notice the first murmur under the ordinary. The final friction is fatigue, not the dramatic kind, the polite, grinding kind, the kind that makes a man look at the same rear entrance for the sixth time and feel, briefly, that reality might be looping. This is exactly why I do not want a candidate who needs novelty to stay alive. I want one who can work inside recurrence without losing the edge of attention. The kangaroo rat can. It is mostly nocturnal. Still true. It is still solitary. Still true. It still thrives on a repeated movement pattern anchored to a safe base. Still true. It still manages resources carefully. Still true. At this point, the facts do not feel like proof points so much as the texture of the employee's entire working style. The site and the animal have finally matched each other. A lot of late shift security work is simply the ability to remain gently suspicious without becoming frantic or numb. That is an art. The building is quiet but not innocent. The lot is empty but not irrelevant. The gate is shut but still worth a hand on the chain and one look at the latch. The corridor is familiar, but familiarity is exactly why a tiny new detail can stand out. The Watchman continues because the site is safest when someone keeps treating slight changes as real information. At this point, if I am staffing this site, I do not want the candidate who needs to feel dominant. I want the candidate who will walk the same stretch at 3:41 a.m. and still notice that the far end service light is on when it should not be, or that the access door near the stairwell carries itself just a little differently tonight. That is the work. That is the whole precious, ugly beauty of it. And the kangaroo rat, with its absurd hind legs, long balancing tail, fur-lined cheek pouches, burrow loyalty, sharp senses, careful resource habits, and suspicious overnight brain, is so cleanly aligned with that work that the recommendation starts to feel almost boring in its certainty. Not visually boring. Nothing with cheek pouches should ever be visually boring. Operationally boring, which is much better. The last rounds of the shift should feel a little softer. The air outside begins to thin toward whatever comes after night, though dawn is still mostly rumour. The building is calmer now, not because the risks vanished, but because the route has contained them. The watchman knows the sounds, knows the corners, knows which camera gives a clean view and which one insists on smearing the loading area into beige fog, knows where the access logs live, knows how the alarm dashboard sulks when a door contact needs cleaning. This is not the hour for big declarations, it is the hour for quiet accuracy. The Kangaroo Rat belongs to that accuracy. A final pass by the gate, a final check of the rear entry, a look at the post monitor, a hand over the log or the software form just to make sure the earlier note is clear. Maybe one more radio check, maybe nothing at all except the tiny administrative comfort of a site that has remained itself all night under competent eyes. That is when the whole hiring decision settles into place for me. The best candidate is not the one most likely to impress a stranger at a glance. The best candidate is the one whose natural pattern already includes solitary night work, weak signal detection, careful route behaviour, quick response to disturbance, strong respect for a safe base, resource tracking and endurance in sparse conditions. That is the Kangaroo Rat. In such a concentrated way it almost feels as if the species were developed by a security manager with unusual hobbies. And crucially, it wins without pretending to be something it is not. It does not win by overpowering anyone. It does not win by becoming a fantasy enforcer. It wins by being the most attentive, best calibrated, most quietly severe candidate for the real shape of the work. Notice early, move cleanly, stay steady, keep the site legible, use the systems, keep the records, respect the route, return to post, repeat without decay. That is not a glamorous recommendation. It is a strong one. By the time the shift closes, the site looks almost exactly as it should. Doors secured, gates secured, no one wondering where they should not be. No unresolved alarm, no mysterious access issue left fermenting until morning. Maybe one note in the log, maybe a small maintenance flag for the next team, maybe nothing more than a very good empty night. That is success in this line of work. Success often looks like a boring report and a property that never had the chance to become interesting. The Kangaroo Rat owns that version of success. It owns the long quiet, the bad vibe detection, the repeated route, the tiny headquarters, the good exit plan, the severe respect for slight irregularities, the stubborn refusal to let probably fine do the work of actually checking. It even owns, through those ridiculous cheek pouches and caching habits, the emotional side of documentation better than many much larger creatures who can technically operate a keyboard. When you are evaluating candidates, well, that has to count. I know the obvious alternatives will keep getting nominated. The big names, the strong silhouettes, the animals that look like security if you have only ever consumed security through lazy fiction. Fine, let them have branding. Let them stand near the fence in the brochure. Meanwhile, the Kangaroo Rat will be the one on the real site, in the real cold, under the real sour fluorescent light, noticing the small wrong thing while it is still a small wrong thing. That is who I want on payroll. So yes, the best night watchman is a tiny desert rodent with oversized hind legs, a tail longer than its body, fur-lined cheek pouches, strong hearing, strong smell, a serious relationship with substrate vibration, a solo work style, a burrow-based concept of headquarters, and the exact emotional temperature of someone who hears one faintly incorrect sound and immediately begins treating the night like a formal complaint. The route is being respected. The gate is checked and the post is secure. Somewhere out there, moving across open ground with tiny overqualified seriousness, a Kangaroo Rat is listening to the floor and refusing to miss the clue.